Okay, welcome back to the Driving Humanity Forward and the Green Paradox podcast. So, thank you for all the viewers from episode 1 to 8 of our podcast. And today, before we start, I would like to explain some small detail or narration narration first before we start. So, in a nutshell, from episode 1 to 8 of the EV or the Driving Humanity Forward podcast, which we discuss about the EV, there are many points, but I want to highlight today three key points as follows. First, number one, the transition from IC to EV is not as simple as it looks, because basically it is a disruptive transition from a brown energy ecosystem using fossil fuel to a presumably green energy ecosystem in transportation. Number two, in this transition, there are potentially many paradoxes, and if these paradoxes are not identified and addressed properly, so the transition itself will defeat the purpose of shifting to a supposedly green transportation ecosystem. And number three, these potential paradoxes, uh, in our opinion, arise from the limitation of technology to deliver a green energy, but also at its core is the desire of humans that have shifted to take and throw rather than receive and return. This condition can only be addressed if humanity can start to differentiate between needs and wants. So that is a nutshell in our podcast, Driving Humanity Forward. And the other thing that today I would like to highlight as per our title today, that is EV and COP26. As it is widely known, COP26 have been recently held with a pledge from every country to become green as its result. I think it is interesting to have a discussion as laypersons to try to understand the underlying issues from those pledges and the underlying principle to overcome those issues. Have a deeper understanding of the actions mentioned in the pledge to achieve it. But since actually the three of us is not an expert in this area, so I would like to say a disclaimer that since we are not experts, so today's discussion is hopefully a trigger to have a deeper discussion with the expert in this area. We will be glad to have the expert's explanation in this podcast. And as a guidance or uh, as a storyline to our today discussion, there are three key questions that I would like to ask to Pak Kostup and Pak Eko. First are, what are the pledges made by India and Indonesia in regards of? Is there any, and second, is there any explanation of the underlying principles used to achieve the pledge? And finally, the third question is, as a layperson, are there any parallel things that are parallel thinking with our discussion? And if it does have parallel thinking, what are those parallel thinking? So based on these three questions, I would like to give the time to Pak Sup and Pak Eko. So please proceed.
Thank you, Paika. Thank you for this. And it's a pleasure to meet you again in the episode 9 of driving humanity forward in the green paradox. We have seen in our previous episodes like what has been happening in the EV and how the shift in the various ecosystems is working. And it was also interesting to hear what Mahindra had to say from Toyota Daihatsu and how Toyota is evolving as a mobility company and what they're doing on the sustainability thing. We also had the recently conducted COP26, where, as you rightly said, different nations have pledged. So I'm just presenting the official version of the presentation what Mr. Modi, Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, had presented. So, just a moment. So, let me know once my screen is visible so I can just quickly go through the various points about.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
So, this is the statement by our Prime Minister at the Glasgow Summit at COP26. So, he started with the age-old mantra. So, if you recall our podcast on August 12th, where we dwelled on the topic of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is that the world is one family, and as an extension of that thought, it's basically that Samagachagvam, Samavadvadvam, Mansi Janadam. Just a moment, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So he was trying to explain the meaning of this 21st century, in the 21st century of this age-old mantra, which is Samagachadvam, which is let's move together. Samavadvam is that is let's all interact together. And Samavo Manasi Janatam, that is everyone's mind should be also one. So he's trying to bring in the fact of being oneness to the world and oneness to the families and everything. And as we were discussing in our previous episodes, that we are in the same storm, but in different boats. So we need to face the storm together and handhold each other so that we come out of this crisis and need an urgent attention, which needs the urgent attention. He also emphasized on the fact of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, which is, let's say, like everyone is happy and happiness for everyone. And I will directly jump on the key points where he says the 5 metrics, or what he calls as the Panchamitra, or 5, which represent the 5 nectar elements. And as a pledge from India's side, which is the first being India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. And this is from the current level of around 156 gigawatt. So it's almost tripling in coming 8 to 9 years. Second is India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy. Third being India will reduce the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now to 2030. Fourth being by 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by less than 45%. And fifth being by the year 2070, India will achieve the net zero target of the net zero. While he did this, he was also batting for the use of carbon in the developing countries, considering the developed countries previously had the the technology access and everything, where they have kind of created more carbon and are still consuming more carbon or emitting more carbon than the developing countries. So if you see the per capita levels, that's also still high. And he was also asking about, let's say, like these movements are not limited to transportation, but we need revolutions in multiple sectors like fishing, agriculture, wellness, dietary choices, packing, housing, hospitality, tourism, clothing, fashion, water management, and energy. So it's the entire gamut of things, not limiting to EV or EV transportation. Right? And he also gave a mantra of uh, life. He coined the word life, which means lifestyle for environment. So that's basically again coming back to reuse, recycle, and one more one, right? So it's not just use and throw, but how we can reuse, recycle, and reproduce. So that's basic or the main factors or commitment from the India side, and which are also very, very ambitious targets. The first itself, rising the energy levels or non-fossil energy capacities from 156 gigawatts to 500 gigawatts. It's a humongous task in itself. Right? He also advised on, let's say, like not micromanaging the funds like which are available for going green. So those funds should be given some free hand. The country should be given some free hand to use those funds and make the right decisions which are best suited for the country needs. And uh, again, he was saying that the decisions which we would be taken in the Glasgow would basically for the future generations would be benefiting for the future generations, and it would be a gift for the future generations and for their prosperous life. So these were the broad points which were being debated or posed from the Prime Minister's speech at Glasgow in COP26. So Paika, I would, or Paiko, we can see on the Indonesias and then come back or whichever we would like to propose.
Okay, sure, Pa. I think it's also okay. We can see what Indonesia has pledged, and then we discuss together how is the situation. So let me share my screen then. Is it visible now?
Not yet, Pa.
Not yet. Okay. I hope you can see it now.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So as well, I took it from the official government info, which is from the Cabinet Secretary of Republic of Indonesia. These are the remarks that President Joko Widodo gave during the COP 2026 on the 1st November 2021 at Glasgow. So the key highlight that he gave in this session is that climate change is a major threat to a global prosperity and development. So he acknowledged this. So he acknowledged the threat as a threat, and he stressed that the solidarity, partnership, cooperation, and global collaboration are the keys. So he has been putting a focus that, as we discussed previously, that we cannot do it by ourselves. It has to be done together. Yeah. And the focus that Pak Joko mentioned first is about the deforestation reduction. So according to his data, that the deforestation reduction in Indonesia has been quite significant. So within the year from 2010 until now, and then in last year itself was the lowest within 20 years in terms of forest fire. So forest fire has been fell up to 82% in 2020 comparing to the previous years, and started of rehabilitation of mangrove forests covering areas of 600,000 hectares in 2024. So this is still a promise, yeah. And then next one is renewable energy. So there's also a promise of renewable energy. There have been a development of electric car ecosystem, including the largest solar power plant in Southeast Asia, and then energy using biofuel, as well as the development of clean energy-based industries. Yeah. And the next one is a reforestation potential with a huge area of green land, basically to contribute to, it's a potential to contribute to the climate reduction. So it is one area that Indonesia can contribute, which is reforestation. And then with that, he touched on the global climate finance, whereby the he's asking the developed countries, yeah. So he's asking the developed countries, then what are your contribution? What can you help the developing countries to achieve all these targets together? Then he also said, at his conclusion, he also said a commitment is also on behalf of the AIS, which is the Archipelago and Small Island States Forum. So Indonesia is honored to circulate a joint statement with leaders from the AIS Forum that we are committed to continue the advanced maritime operation and climate action at the UNFCCC. Yeah. So this is basically the nutshell of what Pak Joko conveyed in the forum. And as well, it's a very broad statement. I believe it's a high-level statement. Then from here, I think we can start to discuss, Pak Kostoper, touching on what Pak Eka mentioned. Is there any explanation or not from all these topics?
Yeah.
Mm.
So if we compare, thank you, Paiko, firstly, to bring out like what was the official stand of Indonesia at the COP26. So if we now see, let's say like the India and Indonesia pledge at the COP26, we can see the emphasis on the renewable, then the global climate finance, right? And also the same questions being asked to the developed nations and the role being played by the developed countries.
Right.
And again, emphasis on the renewable energy and reduction of deforestation or reforestation. So basically those steps towards going green. And Mr. Modi touched upon the age-old mantra about going together. And also Mr. Jokowi is asking about the solidarity and partnerships and cooperation and global collaboration. So it's basically getting aligned, and it's something similar what we have been discussing about in our talk. Sure, right? So like how do we align and how do we ensure the local needs are met, or how do we address the problems which are unique to these countries or to the regions or where we are operating. So that's something which it's beyond just you and me discussing. But as Paika was mentioning in the opening remark, that we would need an experts coming in from the variety of domains and collaborate and partner to have this goal achieved. Right?
Thank you, Pak Kostup, for the overview, then you see also the similarity between these two leaders' pledge, and true enough that the collaboration is the key. And I try to find out what from the message of PAICA. I try to find out, is there any action plans, or is there any further detailed definition of what are these pledge meant. So far, I cannot find any yet. And if we need somebody who really knows or really involved in this decision making, or some regulation roll out within the government, to take a look really where are the real target. And as far as I know, this pledge in COP 226 is also something that it has no it doesn't have there's no bounding principle that when we pledge, we have to achieve this and this by 2030, and then what if you cannot achieve that? It's nothing like that. Yeah. So what do you see about that, Pak Kaustup?
Rightly put, Papaiko, because unless if I see the India's pledge, they are timing it out, because that's again in line with the global or the IPCC commitment of going green by certain years and limiting the 1.5 degree temperature rise. So unless it's a time bound thing, we won't be able to take actions which could facilitate that. So we don't know the various what ifs which would be going, or how the action plans would be, made or would be executed. But at least timing it out would give some kind of a sense of urgency, and also invite the various innovations and disruptions which could aid in going towards that step. So that's something basically from a timing perspective. And also it's also giving a sense of urgency that this is not only in the talks now, it has to be executed. So if I see the first statement, which is going to the non-renewable fossil fuel energy by 500 gigawatts by 2030 from current levels of 156, it's a stupendous task. It's a task in itself, because it will entail a lot many things: getting the technology, getting the access, manufacturing that, or multiple things. So it's a complete, creating a new ecosystem, and at a very fast pace.
Right.
So, but that could only happen once we are able to collaborate, once we are able to have the right partners and the right discussions. Otherwise, we won't be able to, meet those targets, the ambitious targets. While we say these are ambitious, these are also necessary, because we have all seen the detrimental effects of the climate change, be it the forest fires, or be it the torrential rains or the cyclones or whatnot. So it's basically the responsibility of all of us to leave this planet, the only planet what we have, right? So to our future generations in a better state, if not we are not able to improve, but not further deteriorate that.
Yeah.
Maybe
True
Paika
enough,
has been listening for
Yeah.
a while. We can
Yeah.
invite
let's see
his
what
views.
Paika. Let's hear what Paika.
My takeaway from your discussion, Pak Eko and Pak Kaustup, at the principal level, I think it is clearly mentioned that both Indonesia and India have the same idea: family, collaboration, by those keywords, solidarity, and many other words. But also how to make this uh, philosophical principle become a practical principle is another story. Like Pak Kostup and Pak also mentioned one idea is must have a bounding principle, and it is time bound. That is one of the idea, and it cannot be decided by one party only. It must be decided by many parties, and maybe also by, of course, that in the COP26, all countries. So all countries must have discuss and have the same idea how to progress forward internally and each country and also between countries. That is a very big issue. Uh, I think if some of the viewers see in the CTSS podcast or CTSS channel, there is already a discussion by Budami and Joko from the Ministry of Finance, and I think, I'm sorry if I'm not saying this correct, but I think Pak Daniel is expert because he follow COP from the first until the last 26. He knows all from the start until the latest one. So if we want to invite him and if he is willing and able, I think it will be interesting to have with him in the practical terms. But anyway, I I yeah, as a layperson, I would say that our discussion driving humanity forward and the green paradox, uh, discussing about one small sector that is the EV, also brings up the same issues or the same thinking of collaboration, being a family, and everything else. So that is, in a way, a good thing, because the three of us, with which is not an expert in COP or either, we come to the same conclusion. So for me, it means that it is very possible to have this collaboration. It just depends on how. Maybe I quote I quote Pa Indra. That collaboration should be a need, not a want. That is a basic issue, I think.
Yeah.
That hopefully this driving humanity forward and the green paradox can support to have a discussion, and finally the practical principle will come out and the time bound activities will come out, and so on and so forth. This is my takeaway. Pak Kostub and Pak Eko, please.
Yeah. Indeed, it is a need. Yeah, exactly like what Pa Indra mentioned, is quoted from what Pa Indra mentioned before. The collaboration on working together towards it, it's a need. It's no longer a want. Yeah, or it's what we need to do. That we need to do now. Yeah. I believe. On the other hand, I believe all this statement has some action plan is already given. Yeah, because like a construction of a world largest green industrial in North Kalimantan province, I truly believe that it is something that is already has a plan and has been started. So somebody who knows that might give a contribution to a further discussion, understanding what actually Pak Joko convey, and as well as Mr. Modi, and then from India, there's definitely it we need a contribution from India as well as a whole world. Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's something, let's say, like we are all in this together. So if any of one of the country is not following or say still does not go carbon neutral, then whatever the good things have been done are automatically negated. So, it has to be a balanced approach. It has to be a collaborative approach so that we all sail through this crisis. And basically, uh, once we coming together is the beginning, and then going forward, there will be ways which will be found out. That's all. Aika, over to you.
Yeah, I think so. So I hope with the viewers seeing the driving humanity forward and today discussion have some enthusiasm uh, or insight or confidence that so we can see from a small sample empirically we can draw the same conclusion, and now it is time to start together. I hope that will be I will that will be the conclusion of the viewers also. And maybe the viewers, if they have some comment or question, please note. So we will. I think Pak Kostup and Pak Eko also will happily answer or discuss any queries or questions. And again, I emphasize that we are not expert in this area. That query in question is how to say is hopefully grow us together strongly growing together.
Agree, Pak.
True.
Any additional?
Whatever best queries as the best of our knowledge, we can address those. But we can give our 2 cents into that. But we would definitely get some, expert who has been closely following this and the ramifications of these plans or how exactly it entails it as a government policy or a policies going forward. But as a layman, whatever we can do, we can always emphasize on the various aspects.
Yeah, I hope Daniel can join. If I mention his name correctly, sorry if it is wrong, but I hope he can join, and we will have a more exciting discussion. All those details. Any other comment from Pak Eko?
No, but I think I've give my statement, and we have the same view. And yes, as you say, if there are some question or clarification or some comment, we would be happy to address, and probably we even can discuss together. We are not the expert, but we can discuss together.
Yeah. So, okay, I think that wraps up for today. So basically, in a philosophical way, there is no much difference, or there is no difference at all. We understand that we must do this together. But in practical terms, considering of the unique internal situation and the global interaction required, it must be explored more deeply. And to do that, we also need the viewers' strong support, query, question, and some expert to join our discussion or discourse. Thank you, Pak Eka, Pak Kostup, for today.
My pleasure,
Thank
Pak.
you, Paika. Thank you, Paika. Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Kosto.
We'll see you in the next episode coming soon, hopefully.
Inshallah, Pak.